I was on a job interview when it went off in a very different direction when the manager of the grocery said, strange things happen here. I said, how so? He said, hard to explain. You'll get used to it though. Somewhere in the back of my head, alarm bells went off quietly. But I needed the money, so I took the job. And the manager was right. Strange things do happen at the grocery, especially right before closing time, near the midnight hour. Of course, during the day, strange and off-putting things did happen too. But as it turns out, they were pretty normal. Yes, we dealt with shoplifters a lot. Kids vomiting on the floor or throwing produce across the store. One customer climbed into one of the milk coolers and refused to leave. That required a call to the police. Throughout all of this, my coworkers pointed out some of the strange ones. A woman who always dressed in black and had the whitest skin you've ever seen, almost porcelain. Her appearance was almost ghostly. There was one pervy man who creeped out all the female employees. There was another woman who seemed to have an endless number of children, almost all of them seeming nearly feral. But there was one guy that was at the top of the list for all of us. He would come in about 15 minutes before the store closed. And he only bought meat, almost always beef and big, cheap pieces of it. He also paid in crinkled and dirty dollar bills. His nickname was the Missing Link, or at least that's what we called him. And boy did he match the nickname. He was overlarge and stooped over, making me think of a silverbacked gorilla. Although I couldn't see it, I had this idea his body was covered in dark, wiry hair. It certainly poked through small holes in his clothing. The other prominent feature was his protruding brow. It was definitely a Cro-Magnon look. One night, just 10 minutes before closing, he lumbered into the store and immediately headed toward the meat section. He looked worse than normal. His clothes looked like he had worn them for days and days, with a thin coating of dirt and grime on them. My two workers groaned because he was the only customer in the place, and they couldn't start closing the store down. Since I had the least tenure, I was tasked with monitoring the Missing Link. Why we had to do this was beyond me. He just put off this unpredictable vibe, like he might start pushing over shelves or knock down displays of new products. I maintained a safe, assured distance, staying halfway down an aisle away from him as he shambled along. It was sort of like watching a caveman lumber along, the way he swayed back and forth, seeming to brush the shelves on each side of the aisle with his hands. As always, he made a beeline right for the meat shelves. I watched him from afar as he stood like a sentinel over the beef on the shelves, taking it in as if it were some kind of holy sacrament. I wasn't sure what to do about it. I mean, he hadn't taken anything, but the clock was ticking fast toward closing time. Still, I maintained my post, watching over him. It didn't take long for the night to go from completely humdrum to completely freaky. The Missing Link leaned over and picked up the biggest hunk of beef he could get his hands on, and he lifted it toward his face. I was positive he was going to inspect it, maybe look at the price, or check it for marbling, I don't know. But instead he lowered his head, opened his mouth, and sank his teeth into the beef and tore a chunk of meat away from the package and started chewing on it. At first I was speechless. This freak was chomping down on a strip of raw meat like it was cotton candy. Everything in me wanted to turn and run. This job was not worth it. But then I thought I really did need the paycheck. So I said, "Hey, you can't do that." He didn't respond, but just kept on eating. Then I said something completely stupid. "You know, you have to pay for that." Maybe he heard me, or maybe he had a full belly of meat. He turned toward me, still holding the big hunk of beef in his hands. Bloody juice dripped off his chin, looking like a red bib. He released the package and it thudded to the floor, heavy and moist. His mouth opened wide with unchewed meat caught in his teeth, and then he roared like some kind of prehistoric beast and charged at me. For about 3 seconds, I was so stunned I couldn't move. He continued to thunder toward me, and I finally broke free from my trance. I immediately started to backpedal away from him, but I was moving too slowly. And with his balk, he was building up momentum. My heart lied to me, thinking I could get away, but my brain knew better. There was no escape. I was about to be knocked into the next county, or worse. Just before he got to me, he threw out his tree trunk-sized arms and his enormous hands slammed into my chest. I felt like I'd been hit by the Hulk. The air left my lungs and my body was in liftoff mode. Gravity ceased to work and I flew through the air, feeling weightless. That sensation ended when my body collided with a display of canned fruit, pineapples, peaches, and pears. The tower of cans collapsed like a building that had been demolished, and I went down with it. I swear I felt like every bone in my body had been shattered beyond comprehension, yet I remained totally conscious and alert. That gave me the ability to watch the missing link roar down the aisle and out of the store and into the night. My comrades picked me off the floor, and remarkably, I was beaten but not broken. I quit my job that very night and never looked back. There are still times I see the missing link charging toward me in my nightmares.